Joe Hill's short story was interesting to me because it combined a serial killer story with a ghost story, which I'd never seen done before. But I also thought it was an interesting opportunity to make a scary horror film that still had a lot of empathy and heart and almost inspiration because it's a true coming-of-age story. And when I thought about combining that with my own memories growing up in North Denver in 1978, I thought there was an interesting film to be made, and that's how this movie came about.
Scott, about a decade ago, brought me, after we had written Sinister, he brought me Joe Hill's The Black Phone, which is one of his favorite stories, and I loved it, but it just wasn't right for us at the time. It just wasn't, there was a whole lot that needed to be added. It was a very small, compact story. We saw that it could be a movie, but it needed a lot of building out, and we didn't know exactly how to do that yet. And then fast forward years later, Scott and I are having a night where we're just talking about things, and he pitches to me the idea of doing a film about his childhood, about doing something about the resiliency of youth and how we as children kind of deal with some really awful things, and that forges us into who we are as adults, and asked me if I'd wanted to work on something like that. And I was like, of course I would. And then through that conversation, The Black Phone came up, and we were like, oh, what if we took this concept of your childhood and put it onto The Black Phone? That would fill in all the blanks that we needed, and it just seemed like a no-brainer.
Ethan does have a no bad guy rule, and I'm really glad he broke it for us. Scott called Ethan to talk to him about the role, and Ethan was very polite. He listened, but basically ended their conversation saying that he promised to read the script, but it was unlikely he would do the role because he doesn't like playing bad guys. Ethan was working in Europe when he read the script, and he left Scott a voicemail really late one night in the voice of the grabber, telling him yes, he'd play the role.
I'm a part-time magician. Would you like to see a magic trick?
Well, the grabber's very mysterious. We don't get into his backstory. To me, the best villains, like Heath Ledger's the Joker or Hannibal Lecter, these are characters who very little about. Bits and pieces, but you certainly don't ever get any scene or any story that explains why they are so monstrous. So I think there's an element of mystery to them. But I think in the case of the grabber, his actions are so abhorrent, what it is that we know he does. I think his need to wear a mask, his need to hide himself, but also to have collected these masks or built these masks that allow for partial reveals at times is really interesting. And I think that most importantly, this ritualistic pattern that he has for abducting his victims and putting them through a period of time of breaking them down with these things that he does is really harrowing. And that allowed Ethan, I think, to create a manner of speaking, a manner of expressing, a manner of emoting that's very, very unique. And I felt like he took the story on wholeheartedly and came to set with an understanding of the grabber that certainly superseded my understanding of him. I mean, I wrote the words and I gave him the masks, but how he speaks, how he gesticulates, how he moves, where he stands, all of these things were things that Ethan knew how to do. And the result is, I think, a pretty memorable villain.
We wanted to tell a story that was about the resiliency of youth, meaning that Finney's childhood had to not be great. There had to be a lot of stuff, being picked on by bullies, having a drunken, abusive father, not a lot of hope in his life, but he still has hope. So why does he still have hope? Well, we created this relationship with him and his sister that is this very loving, affectionate relationship of two kids coming up in a bad home. They're single father, he's an alcoholic, he's working a lot. How do these kids cope? And how they cope is by being there for each other.
Yeah, they're both remarkable. The bond between the two of them is the soul of the movie. You learn very quickly in the film, in the first half hour, how and why they're so connected, because they live in a dangerous world. They live in a world where there's a lot of fighting, there's a lot of bullying. They live in a violent household where their alcoholic father is abusive, but they've got each other and they really look out for each other. And so when the separation occurs because of this abduction by this monstrous figure, the bond still exists between them, and that becomes the source of hope that sustains the film.
Scott has a very singular mind when he's shooting. He very much is in tune with a scene in a way that I don't see out of a lot of folks. I've worked with other directors, I've worked with a lot of people, and he looks at each scene and he's looking for what's missing and looking for how pieces work together. And he has a very, very visual understanding of storytelling and a very visual mind. Like, he creates these incredibly bizarre, fantastic, psychedelic landscapes in his imagination that very much he sees and knows how to bring to life, and in a very tactile way. He wants you to feel like you could reach through the screen and touch the scene there.
Yeah, you know, he made Sinister. That was pretty early on in the Blumhouse history, but he made Sinister, and he let me do exactly what I wanted to do. You know, he's very protective of me as a director in both Sinister and Black Phone. He never made me do anything I didn't want to do. He always got me what I needed for the films, and I think his attitude, at least in my experience on both movies, was whatever it is that you need as a filmmaker, I'm going to trust you and I'm going to make sure that you have it. And in both cases, I delivered a film that he was very happy with and very proud of. And I'll also say this, Jason's just a great guy. You know, he's my closest friend in this business, and he and I confide in each other personally about a lot of things. He is every bit the good guy you want somebody like him to be.
Team Blumhouse was really psyched to have Scott, Cargill, and Ethan back together on another movie. As collaborators, we all have a shorthand, and we all trust each other a lot. I have such confidence in the talent of this group, and I was excited about producing the film because I knew they'd deliver. And based on the reactions thus far, they delivered.
It's pretty interesting how they're able to take this kind of genre and turn it on its head, adding some more emotion into the horror genre. So let me know what you learned from the Black Phone down in the comments down below. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and I'll see you here next time. Later.